Hello and welcome back. We have made it all the way to Module 3. Congratulations, we've come so far. In this module, we are going to get an introduction into wire weaving. So this can be a lot of fun. There are endless possibilities when it comes to wire weaving, so that's why I've made this entire module an intro. I'm going to show you lots of other ways to use a woven set of wires in the next module. We're going to start today actually with this little project here, which is just a really simple wire weave. Hopefully you can see this. Just with two base wires. Let me get rid of that so it'll focus. 2 base wires. Come on, focus. There we go. And a bead. So this is kind of a really good intro project because the weaving on it is a fairly simple weave, and hopefully everyone will have success with this and will be excited to move on to more complicated weaves with more base wires. But today I want to start you off on the right foot. So I've got 2 pieces of 18 gauge wire. I've straightened one already. I still need to run my nylon jaw pliers over the other one here so that it will be straight. Why aren't you focusing today? There we go. Okay. The other thing I need to do is I need to make a bend in my wire about 3.5 inches over. I know this because I've been making these. I've made this pendant a few times already. So I'm making my really sharp bend about 3.5 inches over, and I already kind of did that, but if you grab it on one side of the bend and you bend it, when it comes out of here, the wire is going to kind of come out and around and then over, and you're going to kind of get a little bit of a bulbous little lump right here. So what you want to do after you make your bend is actually move your pliers to the other side of that bend, get them right in the corner and actually squeeze, and when you do that you'll actually see it kind of adjust a little bit, and then you might have to adjust your bend a little bit. I did that so quick you might not have even seen me do it, but I did that. So I've got one wire with a bend pretty much right in the middle of it. You do need to make sure you have a bead. Now what did I do with my bead? Here it is. That fits onto these thicker wires. This happens to be a 10mm bead, but if you only have an 8mm or 12mm or something, that's going to work just as well, but it does have to fit onto this thicker wire. I've got another piece that's also about 7 inches long, and it has been straightened, but it has no bend in it. Those are both 18 gauge wire, or about 1mm wire. Then I need a second wire. This one is a 26 gauge wire. And it's just a little tangled. Let me untangle it. All right. So I haven't cut a piece of this off of my spool. This piece is still like attached to my spool, and I'm just going to work with it right off of my spool. So the first thing I need to make is this little bit of coil right here. So we've already kind of made a coil, so hopefully this isn't brand new to you. I basically need to just leave that tail, put my thumb over it, see if I can get it to focus. There we go. Now I'm just going to coil. It doesn't matter if you coil this way or this way around your wire, but you just need to coil about 3/4 of an inch of coil. And once you get going, you can kind of just I tend to not make this one on with the drill because it's just a little bit of coil, and I don't know, I just don't usually bother. Whoops, knocking the camera around. All right. So I happen to know this is about a 3/4 of an inch of coil that I want from my past experience. However, what we basically want is for it to go around one side of your bead. So if you just have your bead, you can kind of roll it down and see how much more coiling you need. And I'm making sure to get rid of any gaps as I make them. Almost there. There we go. Let's see. I haven't actually measured this, but that seems like it's going to be pretty close. When I go like this, it gets to the other hole. Okay, I'm happy with that. If I need a little bit more, I do have a little bit of a tail here. I can make just a little bit more coil, or I can unwrap it if I have too much coil. I'm going to give it a couple more just to make sure I have enough, because I don't have very much tail on this end. Now I'm going to slide this over. And I'm going to bring in my second base wire. All right. So this is what I've got set up here. The bead is going to go on to this piece. If you want to put it on now, I mean, it's always good to test fit it, but it doesn't need to sit there right now. What I need to do is actually start weaving these together. You see this bend here and where they cross, that's not ideal. So I want to straighten this out. I'm just using my fingers, running my fingers. If you want to use your nylon jaw pliers, you can, but I find that that's going to work. Bring that back in. That's better. This one needs to come out just a little bit. And that's going to keep me way less confused while I'm weaving, having these wires set up just like this. So spend a minute on your base wires, even as you work, and set them up like you want them. So now I need to wrap this weave wire around both of these base wires. I'm actually going to move this back and work kind of closer to my ends, because I can slide this over when I'm ready for it. But for now, it's just a lot easier to work closer to these ends. So I wrap it twice around both wires, and now I'm just going to wrap it over the bottom wire. I think 3 more times is what I do. 2, 3. All right. Now you'll notice that I got those pretty nice right away. I'm actually holding this weave wire like it was a piece of wool when I was crocheting, and so how I do that is I put the wire over my middle finger and under the 2 fingers around it, and my palm is facing down. Now I actually move it so my palm is facing up, and I put my pinky finger over this wire, and then I need to slide my wire down to give me a little more space. I flip my palm over again. So my wire is coming from my project around my pinky finger, under this one, over this one, around my middle finger, and then back this way. And what that does is I can get a really good pull without actually pinching the wire and pulling. It's this weave through my fingers that's actually holding the wire, and I can get a really strong pull on that without like spending a lot of energy gripping my fingers. And that becomes more second nature the more you do it. All right, so let's see. Twist everything around, that looks better. So I've got my 3 coils. Now I need 2 more wraps around both wires. And now, there we go, 3 more coils around just the bottom wire. All right, now 2 more coils. Now you'll notice there is a small gap between my base wires. That small gap happens to be exactly the thickness of my weave wire, and it's because these coils are going in here often enough that it maintains that gap. So beware, you can do any number of double wraps and any number of coils in between. That's completely up to you, depending on the design that you want to do. However, if you do like more than about 3 or 4 of these bigger coils around both of them, you'll find that this gap starts to disappear, and that these base wires start to get pulled together because you've done so many of these coils around both of them. That's sort of why I only do 2 of these, because then it's not enough to pull these base wires together. And when you go to do your coiling, you still have that gap there. It's really important to maintain that gap. Oops, can't see what I'm doing with this perspective. There we go. Let me bend this up again and get that out oriented the right way. So I'm going to work away on this until I have 20 of these taller double wraps and the same number of single wraps in between them. Squish that together as I work, make sure everything stays tight. 2, 3. If I started really close to the ends of my wires and I'm running out of base wire, you might have to just grab the end of this and slide it. And in fact, once you get about an inch of weaving here, you're going to find that this doesn't slide as easily anymore, and you need to kind of get this into place before you go too far. That one slid really easy, but this one with the coiling, different weaves allow for sliding a little bit easier than others. And this one the one of these like to slide, but this other one is giving me grief, and I should have moved it closer to my corner sooner. That's okay though. We can usually, there, now it's okay. Okay. That's about what we want. There. So I've got this corner pulled right up to that first double weave. I wish this would focus a little bit better. All right. So I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tall ones. I'm going to just keep working away here until I've got 20 of them. 1, 2, 3. All right, one other thing that I want to mention as you begin to do these weaves, one of the biggest challenges I see when people start to do this is actually holding on to your base wires. This hand can actually get quite tired while you're holding it, and you have a tendency to grab this and mangle this part of your base wire in your fist as you grab it. And it's not usually an intentional thing. It's sort of something that happens unintentionally, but it means that afterwards you have to try and straighten everything out, and that's just one extra step. So as you do this, I want you to try to aspire to not bending your base wires. And if that's something that's giving you a lot of trouble, maybe try a thicker base wire. Maybe go to a 16 or even a 14 gauge for your base wires. Oops, that's one too many. Talking away here. And that's going to help your base wires stay straight. And then that's going to help you appreciate how nice it is when your base wires stay straight, and hopefully help to motivate you to learn how to do this weaving without bending your base wires. There are a few things I'm doing. You'll notice like my thumb kind of leads the wire into position fairly close and actually touching the base wire. Like as I do these, my thumb is pressed right against that base wire, so it's bracing it. So I'm not just like pulling to put a bend right here in my base wires. I'm actually bracing my base wires and pulling this, away from them so that I get a nice tight coil or wrap each time. And, sometimes your fingernail just doesn't cut it. What I'm doing here might not be totally obvious just from the video, but I am grabbing tight to my base wires, but I'm not actually grabbing my base wires. I'm just grabbing them so my plier jaws are touching my base wires, and that means it catches on this. And so it's kind of I've got a really loose squeeze on my handles here. I'm not grabbing them so hard that I'm grabbing my base wires. I'm just holding them this far apart and squeezing them, putting force this way to squeeze these wraps together. All right, what am I at? 3, so I need 2 there. I have not been counting these. I will have to go back and see how much. If you're not getting these totally tight as you're doing this, well, for one thing, they're going to look really inconsistent, and they're not going to look as nice and professional. So the squishing in, I know you lose real estate, you don't move down your wire as fast, but it's this consistent spacing that makes it look so nice. So I do really encourage you to squish stuff in, but you know, sometimes your first one doesn't end up as tight as you'd like, and that's okay. We're going for the right distance along here rather than the number of wraps. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. This one is 20, almost like I planned that, hey? All right. I always like to end with the coils because coiling 3 times like that is like tying a knot in wire. You can't actually tie a real knot because, of course, the kink will be so tight that your wire will break. But by coiling 3 times like that, it's kind of the equivalent of tying a knot in string. All right, I just pulled that base wire, so this corner is still tight in this weave here. I am ready, if I show my bead, to get my bead on the end. Here, all right. Got some coiling here, I got some weaving here. Let's bring this up and around my bead. And that actually is just the right amount of coiling. You see how it stops just short of this wire. So I'm happy with that. I can cut this short little tail off. Sorry, my pliers are all caught up in my weave wire. There we go. Let's get rid of that little tail. Now always remember, I cut an end off of my finished piece. Always go in, make sure you don't have any scratchy piece anytime you cut even a tiny little weave wire end like that off. Just make sure that you haven't created a scratchy bit. Okay, now I actually need to make a bend in this wire. I'm going to put it right at the end of my coil there. And now it's same as putting this bend at the top of another pendant. You have to make a sharp bend, which means kind of pressing this part of your pliers and that bit of wire into the bead in order to get that sharp bend. That takes practice. If it doesn't look that sharp, it's going to be okay. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now, when I bring this side around, I like to do a couple of kind of stylized things with it. These are optional. If you don't like how this style comes out, make up your own thing. Don't even worry about it. But when I bring this around, I do like to leave it uneven. So I've got a little gap on one side and not the other because, you know, sometimes life isn't balanced. Sometimes things aren't fair. Another thing I like to do is I like to give this a twist. But again, that's totally not necessary. And I'm just kind of bringing it around slowly, trying to keep this looking nice. I am going to finish my twist with my pliers. I'm not grabbing very gently. Anytime you want to grab on over top of where you've woven with some metal jaws, you have to be very careful. You can just simply squeeze too tight and damage these wraps, and that's not a very desirable place to be. I want to just twist this a little farther down. But again, I'm not grabbing really hard. If you're really nervous about that, you can use your nylon jaw pliers for that. I just find that they're a little bulkier and harder to get in. So, I don't know. I feel like something like that's about right. But that's totally up to you. I'm going to just twist this. Again, I'm being very gentle with my grip. Do not want to grip this too hard. I just want this twist to be a little lower. There, I like that a little more. Cool. Now, I really like the feature where I've actually got the weaving going around the first couple of wraps here, and then it goes to the thinner, just plain wire underneath. So that's why I've actually got so much extra wrapping here. I'm okay with that. I think that's going to work out nicely. So now, holding those two bale wires kind of together, I'm going to just start twisting and bringing this wrap around the top. It's wanting to twist a little bit, so I want to keep it flat. And I'm going to get rid of this tail because I know I have enough weaving, but until you know you have the right amount of weaving, you might want to just leave at least some length on that tail. All right, this is coming out. Before I go any farther, I'm actually going to undo that. I've just got that one bend there. I need to make this bail. I almost forgot. So I'm going to leave a little bit more space on my neck and bend this forward. I've got my bail making pliers here. Let's bring it in like this. I don't know if you can see on the end there. This is going to come over and around, and I want to switch these. I want the bail wires underneath of this. So I'm going to kind of just make it happen, and then continue these bail wires down as best I can. Things are a little cockeyed. That's okay. Sometimes you just got to make things, do what you want to do. There, straighten that out, and then hopefully you can see this. Bring this together so that my neck is nice and tight together and snug. All right. I am actually going to snip these bail wires off while I'm here. I want them to come to the bottom of this first wrap on my neck, but not really stick out past that. All right, let's just hold everything how we want it. There we go. And now, I just want that to be a little straighter. So I'm just going to bend it straighter. There we go. If you're not sure about things lining up, put your bail makers back in your bail to line everything up there. And I'm going to just coax this around. Some more. It's giving me a little grief. I want to kind of sit flat. There we go. And then I come around again with both of them. And around again. All right. The one on the bottom, I'm going to bring around one more time. And so now I'm going to wrap this one inside the bail here, and this one inside the bail here. So let's cut those off. So you don't want them both wrapping around the same, either front or back of the bail, because it'll kind of get lumpy. That's why I did it this way. Think about there. This needs to go inside my bail, just like we did before. This one's going this way. Sometimes these are hard to get right tight, so do the best you can. Tuck them down if you can. I don't really have a down to tuck them into, but that's okay. They're not sticking out, they're not sharp. Sometimes if your bail isn't exactly straight, you have to like come in afterwards and just straighten it. This ended up tight around the bead, but I think that's okay. It still looks just fine. So this is a really quick little project. You do need a bead with a hole big enough to fit over your base wire, but it's a really fun way to use this nice simple wrap like this. I hope you enjoyed this video. The next one, we are going to tackle some different weaves with more base wires. So stay tuned, that's going to be a lot of fun.